and the panelists. I'll be presenting my innovation on sterilization of respirators using face mask and sterilization of respirator using hydrogen peroxide and
In this video, we will depict how respirators are sterilized using an innovative idea of UH. As we all know, due to growing coronavirus pandemic, the daily demand and utilization of masks has increased exponentially. This has contributed for acute shortage of PPE worldwide. The need to safely secure PPE has been highlighted and is already in practice at higher centers like AIIMS and Nebraska Medical Center, Oman. A number of innovative ideas for reuse of respirators have been practiced across the globe. At Nebraska Medical Center, ultraviolet lights have been installed in a closed room and is used for decontamination of respirators. Keeping this in mind, we thought of replicating this concept by using an airtight container and ultraviolet lights. So, here we propose a jugaad idea of UH by using UV light and an old condemned refrigerator. With the help of our medical team, we arranged for old refrigerators and freezer boxes. Subsequently, UVC light and reflective mirrors were installed in the refrigerators. The mirror increases the efficiency of the decontamination processes. So, we should understand the mechanism of sterilization. When UVC light comes in contact of hydrogen peroxide droplets,
I think the video is not
running.
running.
Yeah, Dr. Bharat, I can't seem to see any movement.
sir, not running. Should I
Yeah,
share
the
again,
video
sir?
is not running.
Yeah, the audio is clear, but the video is not running.
Sir, should I share it again?
Yes, yes.
Using an innovative idea.
Yeah.
So now it's running, sir?
Respirators
Yes, yeah.
are sterilized using an innovative idea of UH. As we all know, due to growing coronavirus pandemic, the daily demand and utilization of masks has increased exponentially. This has contributed for acute shortage of PPE worldwide. The need to safely secure PPE has been highlighted and is already in practice at higher centers like AIIMS and Nebraska Medical Center, Oman. A number of innovative ideas for reuse of respirators have been practiced across the globe. At Nebraska Medical Center, ultraviolet lights have been installed in a closed room and is used for decontamination of respirators. Keeping this in mind, we thought of replicating this concept by using an airtight container and ultraviolet lights. So, here we propose a jugaad idea of UH by using UV light and an old condemned refrigerator. With the help of our medical team, we arranged for old refrigerators and freezer boxes. Subsequently, UVC light and reflective mirrors were installed in the refrigerators. The mirror increases the efficiency of the decontamination processes. So, we should understand the mechanism of sterilization. When UVC light comes in contact of hydrogen peroxide droplets, free hydroxyl radicals are generated. These radicals in turn destroy microbes, viruses and bacteria on the surface. During the whole process, guidelines recommended by Center of Disease Control for reuse of respirators were. This video highlights how masks are handed over by the doctors to mid-level ophthalmic personnel after use. The MLOP notes down the details and keeps the masks aside for sterilization. These masks can be used for 6 to 8 hours at a stretch. This video shows how respirators are taken out of the paper bag and kept in UH by trained MLOP. These masks are then hanged with the help of copper hangers inside the UH. Similarly, the Ziploc bags are taken out of the boxes and sterilized with the help of UH and hydrogen peroxide. The Ziploc bags with respirators are then kept in sterile boxes dedicated for this purposes. The respirators as well as Ziploc bags have name of the doctors written over it to avoid confusion. So, the doctors for duty in the morning collect their respirators from the MLOP. We also have a separate area dedicated for the decontamination of respirators. Hence, this effective technique of decontamination of respirators is economical, reusable, and will also prevent shortage of respirators and masks in near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bharat.
Thank you.
Dr. Mohita. Dr. Mohita is there. Dr. Mohita Sharma, I can't seem to see. We could have any other judge ask a question. I'll just start off with the question. Dr. Bharat, did you evaluate for any deterioration in quality of the masks, and how many times can you actually re-sterilize and reuse the same mask without deterioration in the quality of the material, fraying of the material, as well as the efficacy of the filtration process?
Yes, sir. Sir, lot of background. Yes, sir. Sir, actually, we are using this for respirators, and we are sterilizing the respirators for about 6 to 8 times. The whole cycle takes around 20 minutes, and we have seen like over the we are using it for a long time now, and we have seen that the respirators hold good for 6 to 8 cycles. So at least for 1.5 to 2 months we can use them. So this is not applicable for 3-ply mask or one-time uses disposable mask, only for respirators. And like a few previous studies have revealed, like they have decontaminated the respirator for around 15 times, but we have kept it for 6 to 8 cycles, sir. And we have found it very efficacious. Thank you.
I think the question is assessing the efficacy after sterilization, whether it holds, it would prevent the direct egress, means whatever the egress of the organisms which happen, they pass through that particular respirator or not. You are talking only about not objectively assessed. You are talking about the subjective part of it.
Yes, sir. Sir, that we have not assessed directly, but due to previous literature, as per the literature, the reaction with the hydroxyl radical generated during the reaction process have proven to be 99% effective in killing the microbes. So we, based on that concept, we are sterilizing it, and we are using it for 6 to 8 cycles, sir.
Okay. Sterility is not in question. The question is whether that all process degenerates or disintegrates the means the fabric of the whole N95 mask. That is what has to be objectively assessed before it can be safe enough for the user to use it, and prevent him from further infection which happens.
Sir, that we have not directly assessed, sir, the microbe killing property but we are using it for 6 to 8 times, and after that we are discarding it, because after that the quality of the material goes down, what we feel, and after that we discard it maximum 6 to 8 cycles.
Dr. Bharat.
Yes, sir.
Can I have? So everybody has to label his mask.
Yes, sir. Before
it will not. It will slightly tedious. In a big hospital, everybody has to mark his mask and they keep it in the same place. Then they have to take the same mask out.
Sir, we have separate Ziploc bags and separate mask for. Once you are with your duty in the evening, you can. While there is a separate area for giving it to the mid-level personals, so you can directly write your name with a sketch pen and put it in the Ziploc bags and can hand it over. So next day again when you come back, you can there is a label of your name, you can take it. So it looks slightly tedious, but it's going on smoothly since everybody is following the protocol.
Sorry to cut Dr. Bharat, we are running out of time.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Dr.
much.
Bharat. We'll go on to the next presenter, Dr. Atul, who would be talking about his innovation on conjunctival flap separator. Dr. Atul?
Sir, I think Dr. Atul is not available, sir.
He's not. Okay,
so
sure.
You can go.
So we go on to the next.
Yes.
Dr. Nivian.
Yeah, yes, sir.
You are there? Okay,
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
So you could start your screen share.
Sure.
Your innovation would be CMT Flex IOL, a new option for aphakia, and aptly judged by question by Dr. Priya Narang, an outstanding innovator for cataract surgery herself. So please start your presentation.
Thank you, sir. It's seen, sir, on the screen.
Yes, yes, please.
Yeah. So respected teachers, senior ophthalmologists, my dear friends. So I'm going to talk on the new innovation, the CMT Flex IOL, a new option for aphakic treatment. So there's no financial interest in my presentation. So this is a case of a 360-degree sublactated lens, which was planned for a lensectomy, vitrectomy, and a secondary IOL. As you all know that every innovation comes with a question why. So that is how mine also started. Because for generations, we have been doing SF IOL, started with the 2-point and 4-point fixation with the sutures, and then came the Charriot's, the glued IOL technique by Amar, where you had to externalize the haptics. And then the Arvind modified it with the XNIC technique, where the haptics were externalized using the needle. And then Yamane's technique came where you externalize the haptic and then it was cauterized. But then I thought all these were innovations of the existing IOL. So why not come up with a new design of an IOL that can be used for the treatment for aphakia? So as you can see, I'll just run through video. For any secondary IOL procedure, we all agree that the 0-180 marking is one of the key factors. So after marking the 0-180 degree, 2 by 2.5 scleral partial thickness flaps fashioned using a crescent plate. I think people who are well, so it's not very difficult to do also. So once the flaps are raised 1.5 millimeters from the limbus, a 23 gauge sclerostomy is made by the needle. So as you can see in this case, we have a totally dislocated lens. So the first thing I tried doing here is using the same sclerostomies to pierce the needle inside to stabilize the lens, and using the other sclerostomy with a 23 gauge cutter. Initially just clearing off the vitreous behind the lens before I make a puncture into the lens. And since it's a very soft cataract, a combination of good suction and cutting, making sure we don't drop it inside. As we are surgeons, we know how difficult it is and how the scenario changes once it goes inside. So the entire lens was removed. So now this is a new model of the CMT Flex IOL. As you can see, it's an hydrophilic lens, which has got a specialized T-shaped haptics in the end. So these T-shaped haptics, when brought outside through the sclerostomies, open up and prevent the lens from falling back inside. So there will not be any need for suturing or tucking of these IOLs. So these are specially designed Prenev T-Flex forceps. As you can see, they have a small broad tip. So this helps in grasping those T-shaped head or the neck. So you should make sure it doesn't chip off also. So at this time, we do not pull it outside. We just inject the lens and making sure we leave the trailing haptic at the wound or at the over the iris. So once the IOL is injected, and then we carefully bring it out of the sclerostomy. You can see the pop of the T-flex as it opens up. And then once you leave it, the T prevents it from falling back inside. So that is almost the end of one side of the surgery. So this is just a small animation clip. And this can be done through any IOL cartridge because these are hydrophilic lenses, just to make sure that the T-shaped haptic comes out first because it makes it easier to grasp. So as you can see, the lens is injected through a clear corneal incision and then grasped. And once it is brought out, these T-shaped opens it and then it prevents it from falling back inside. So the other side, using the handshake technique, you can just transfer it. You have these grasping forceps which have serrations. So just transfer it to the other hand. And the second side is also gently brought outside. So that is practically the end of the surgery. You can see a well-centered IOL. And they have angulations between the haptic and the optics. So that prevents the rubbing of the iris, and it sits almost in the plane of the PC. So right now you can use glue to close the flaps, or you can even just suture the flaps or just leave it like that. And we have a 1-year post-op analysis of the patients. This is just the post-op day 1 pictures. And at day month, we're also doing studies on the UBM to see the position of the lens, and OCT through the sclera to see how the flaps are actually behaving under the IOL. So our data has been published in a few of the local journals and also recently in JCRS as an innovative lens design for the treatment of aphakia in post-cataract surgeries. So once again, I thank the AOS for this opportunity, and I think this helps us to think outside the box and stay corona negative. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nevin. Dr. Priya, your thoughts and comments.
So Dr. Nevin, congratulations. It was a delight to see this video presentation of yours. I just want few points for my clarification. I just wanted to know that what was the size of the sclerotomy that you made with that you made?
It's a 23 gauge this thing, ma'am, sclerostomy size. We tried because that's why we don't have to suture the sclerostomy, and we designed the lenses in such a way that it comes easily out through the 23. Because anything bigger, there might be some leakage at sclerostomy sites.
Yes. And what is the dimension of the T?
The dimension of the see, because we are just applied for patent and this thing, I can just tell you the overall diameter of the lens is around 14 millimeters, and this is 0.33 millimeters. I think the dimension.
Okay, so because I just wanted to know that when you are pulling it out from that 23 gauge thing, is there a specific movement that you do to pull that out? Because when you're pulling it out, does that T kind of thing come together and then you're pulling out and it spreads out, or how is it like?
The best thing is this is a hydrophilic lens, no, ma'am. So whether you grasp it at the head or at the neck, I think it folds in such a way and then comes out. So there's no particular way for that.
I think that was pretty good, pretty interesting, and looks very simple. So I think that's good. Yeah. So do you have these lenses available in all the diameters? I mean, sorry,
yes,
in all the diopters?
Yes, ma'am. Now we have the regular powers. Appasamy is the one who's manufacturing the lenses. As the only question that comes up is in short eyes and long eyes. So right now that can be customized, because then we'll have to alter the sclerostomy areas where we are marking, because right now we have it only for the normal eye length.
And the end-to-end diameter is 14, so probably it would work well in bigger eyes, in myopic eyes. Because we keep struggling whenever we have a diameter more than 30 millimeters, the white to white diameter. So we keep on struggling for that. You know, we have many methods to how to tackle that situation. But if you say your lens is 14, so have you tried in myopic eyes?
Yes, ma'am, we have tried in myopic eyes, but I think sometimes if it is too large, one sclerostomy can slip outside when you're pulling the other one. So right now we can customize for, I think you did the vertical glued IOL, so that was a nice idea to tackle these eyes actually instead of going this way. Yes,
okay. Yeah, perfect. I think that was great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Nevin. We'll go on to the next presenter, Dr. Narendra Singh Verma.
Yeah.
Dr. Narendra is there.
Yeah.
Dr. Narendra will be presenting on EasyTor, an easy all-in-one solution for toric multifocal lens implants. Dr. Narendra Singh, can you please start your screen share? And Dr. Puninder Vaseem would be the direct evaluator.
Hello. Hello.
Is it?
Yeah, it is visible. Yes, please. Although the audio is not there from the video.
Hello.
Audio is not there.
No, either you can speak directly, which may be better, unless you can get the audio back.
Hello.
Thank you, AIOC ARC, for
Is
this
it
wonderful
audible now?
opportunity. I present to you EasyTor, an instrument which provides an easy and all-in-one solution for toric multifocal lens implantation. By using basic operating microscope, immersion A-scan, and manual keratometer, surgeons are implanting monofocal lenses with minimal post-op refractive error since almost a decade. The majority of them cannot maintain expensive instruments, so they are reluctant in implanting multifocal toric lenses, as there are higher chances of unpredictable outcomes due to errors in axis alignment, inability to measure angle kappa, which should be less than 5 degrees, inability to measure pupil size in different light conditions. The common causes of errors in toric lens axis alignment are errors due to manual markings, errors due to cyclotorsion, parallax error occurs as there is large distance between corneal markings and lens marks. Error due to head tilt occurs if axis measurement and axis marking are done separately. Manual marking is a contact method usually done by bubble marker or freehand marking. There are chances of error due to smudging or wipeout of mark. In this case, error due to head tilt is 27 degrees when the head is turned from left to right. It is demonstrated by autokeratometer readings. In the right eye, axis changes from 88 to 61 degrees, while in the left eye, axis changes from 114 to 87 degrees. New version has 600 LEDs. This system consists of 4 parts. Illuminating disc having 600 LEDs. Camera to capture high quality images in different light conditions. Processing unit provides multiple apps, online access to apps like Barrett Toric Calculator. Wireless display streaming capabilities to multiple devices. This system can measure axis and nature of astigmatism, chord length mu, angle kappa, angle alpha, pupil size and pupil center shift. Prediction of posterior corneal curvature with respect to anterior and also assists in axis alignment of toric lens by elimination of all errors. Basic steps are: capture photograph of eye when measuring axis of astigmatism. Use different apps to mark axis alignment on the photograph. Use this photograph during surgery for final axis alignment. Demonstration. Measure K1 and K2 from manual keratometry. LED-based topography for measurement of axis of astigmatism. Simultaneously capture photographs for axis marking in same head position. Nature of astigmatism by color map, whether regular or irregular. Prediction of posterior corneal curvature with respect to anterior corneal curvature by comparing P1 and P2 Purkinje images. Measure IOL power by immersion A scan. Demonstration of toric axis alignment. From menu, select toric axis marking. Import picture from the gallery. Open keratometer data. Enter K1, K2, steep axis, site of incision, and axis of alignment calculated from Barrett Toric Calculator. Increase the size of eye and center it. Adjust size of lens image and axis mark rings in such a way that the lens margin and incision sign coincide with the limbus. Rotate the lens to align with the axis of implantation. There is also an option for marking 3 landmark points as yellow lines. The axis of these lines is displayed at one end. Save the picture. It can then be magnified and rotated as desired. Picture can be displayed on mobile, tablet or other display devices in the OT for axis alignment reference. Picture without lens image can also be saved and used as a reference to visualize iris structures. It eliminates parallax errors as the iris is very close to lens marks. Marking of 2 landmark points as in the saved picture. Final check of axis alignment of toric lens. Compare toric lens marks with iris structure to eliminate parallax error. Pre-op and post-op pictures compare the axis alignment. Only 1 to 2 degrees of misalignment is present. Demonstration of apparent chord length mu, angle kappa and angle alpha. Select picture from the gallery and adjust size of the picture, move it in the center and freeze it. Now adjust optical axis, white circle on the border of limbus, then adjust pink circle of pupil size on border of pupil. Then move chord mu icon in center of light reflex. Save the picture and increase the size as required. In the first case, patient is suitable for multifocal lens, but in the second case, he is not. In the first case, it is better to prefer extended depth of focus lens as optical axis, that is wide circle center is away from visual axis, so angle alpha is more than normal. These pictures are useful to easily explain the eye condition to the patient when they are unfit for multifocal lens. In this case, angle kappa is 6.95 degrees. It should be less than 5 degrees. Demonstration of pupil size. Pupil size is measured in photopic normal and scotopic conditions, and pupil center shift is measured. The values are displayed as a bar diagram with maximum and minimum recommended limits for a particular procedure. In the present case, pupil center shift is 0.49 millimeters.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That was a very interesting presentation, Dr. Naresh. Dr. Kunender, any comments?
Yeah, it is really very, very interesting. I could see, but I think we need to see more in detail because a lot of issues are there which are required to be taken care of before surgery and during surgery. And in both type of IOLs, like in multifocal IOLs and in toric IOLs. Yes. I think if you would have done it separately for multifocal IOL and for toric IOL, because requirement for toric IOL is different and requirement for multifocal IOL is different, and range is different. So it would have given us better understanding. And because of the paucity of time, I think you could not explain it better, and you cannot demonstrate the video and the actual surgical part, or the part how pre and intraoperative you manage the thing. But as a concept, I think it is really good. But as you have said that the posterior corneal curvature, which you differentiate or appreciate by separation of 2 Purkinje images. I think we need to see the posterior corneal curvature in term by the sham flip camera, what we are accustomed to by using it, and that gives us the exact astigmatism, which is the concave mirror of the posterior surface. And other things, the practicality has to be seen before we go in and use it. But the concept itself is really wonderful. I should appreciate that.
Sir, you are exactly right. There are different points there. There is toric multifocal. You can go for toric multifocal only for the toric. And about the P1, P2. So this is P1 and P2 are measured by optical measurement system. It is not by that sand flip. So if we consider the cornea's anterior curvature is with the rule and posterior against the rule, then I have shown that 24 LED lights are there where we can see P1 and P2 clearly. So if anterior cornea is with the rule and posterior against the rule, then the distance between the vertical P1 and P2 will be more as compared to in the horizontal. Vertical that will be less, and the horizontal P1, P2 difference will be more. So by this difference, we can make out whether the posterior curvature is following the anterior curvature, whatever there is in the Baylor neurogram, Barrett universal formula. They are saying that posterior is against the rule.
Opposite.
So if anterior is with the rule, then whether posterior is opposite or it is oblique or so, just an idea we can make out from it. It is in the development stage, the optical measurement, the distance between the P1 and P2 will decide how much is the power difference between the anterior and posterior curvature. Usually posterior curvature is more steeper, so P2 is inside the P1. So it will just give the idea that how the P2 is behaving as compared to P1, how the posterior is behaving with compared.
Yeah, that is what is important before we go for toric IOL implantation.
So if there is a lot of change, it is opposites, then we can go for.
One question is there: have you compared this with the existing mode of measurements what we are using?
No, sir. It is under development. I have taken only 24. I lit 24 LEDs, and all 24 LEDs P1 and P2 was visible. And then by software we mark the distance from the center. So we are able to mark the distance between them from the center. So we can later on we will be able to measure the power of the P1 and P2. Or difference between
that is one thing, but what angle kappa, what you were saying, and angle alpha.
Yeah.
So angle kappa measurement means I just want to say that all the measurements which you have done, which you are showing here, have they been compared with the existing tools which we are having and on which we rely and we trust upon? Because that's what I mean to say. If you compare it, that will give us validation.
Dr. Purender wants to say that any instrument that you introduce should be eventually validated.
Yeah.
But the concept is good, and I think that's a long-term plan that should come. Thank you, Dr. Purender. Wonderful, insightful points. And thank you, Dr. Narendra. Dr. Anaga would now lead onwards for the next set of presenters.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Rohit. Wonderful presentation till now. So I would like to invite our next speaker, Dr. Shweta Tripathi. She would be speaking to us on glaucoma skill companion. Over to you, Dr. Shweta. Please share your screen.
Yeah, thank you so much. And good morning, the esteemed jury. I would like to thank the entire team of ARC and especially Chitra ma'am for giving me the opportunity to present this innovation. So I'm just going to share my screen.
Yeah, please share your screen, ma'am.
I am Mr. Sanjay. Can you please help me with that?
Yes, Dr. Shweta. When you click on share screen, what is happening?
It's showing me 3 options: basic, advanced, and files.
Okay,
and
so just click share at the right hand side bottom. Let's share your complete screen, and then you can play the video, whatever PPT it is.
Yeah, can you
now open your PPT. It's a video or PPT?
Yeah, it's a video. I'm just going to start that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am Dr. Shweta Tripathi, Senior Consultant Glaucoma Services, Indira Gandhi Eye Hospital and Research Center, Lucknow. And I'm here to share with you my experiences for the glaucoma companion. I'll start the presentation with a beautiful quote by Confucius which says, "I hear and I forget. I see and I remember. I do and I understand." Taking the skill acquisition through the Dreyfus 5-stage model, we see that the movement is from the novice to the advanced beginner, competent, proficient, and expert. There is the significance of this learning curve even for the glaucoma skills. We all know glaucoma is the most important cause of irreversible blindness worldwide. Intraocular pressure is the only modifiable significant risk factor in the development of the disease, and thus the accuracy of the IOP and assessment of angle are two skills which form the early part of the curve. Goldmann applanation tonometry is currently the gold standard for tonometry. GAT involves a slit-mounted device with a prism on the tip of the tonometer. This tip is placed against the central cornea, which is anesthetized and stained with topical fluorescent dye. The tonometer head is gently advanced to apply force to the cornea until the inner edges of the two half-circle Meyers cobalt blue filter through the slit lamp. Now the question arises, what would be the challenges in acquiring the skills of tonometry and gonioscopy, and what are the solutions? We could have precision in Meyers or precision in image acquisition, repeated readings during the procedure, patient cooperation has to be assured, and repeated attempts which may be causing damage to the corneal epithelium. And to overcome these challenges, we have to have increased practice sessions, and we can use models such as a plastic eye or innovative models in order to ensure the patient's safety and still the acquisition of the skill.
Mr. Sanjay, the video is audible or not?
Yes, it's audible. It's audible, ma'am.
Oh, sorry.
It's audible. Please
We can hear
continue.
you.
Sorry.
The glaucoma companion was designed and the module was structured. To overcome the challenges for increased practice sessions for the postgraduate, an L-shaped bar was designed along with Madhu Enterprises. One limb of the attachment is so designed to fix to the slit lamp, and the other, that is, there are two circular apertures which allow the fixation of the eye. In this case, the practice eye is that of the goat's eye. This part of the anal body is usually wasted and can be utilized for educational purposes. But the glaucoma companion is incomplete without a well-structured module. Now, for each of these modules, we will have the learning objectives defined. The steps to be demonstrated by the mentor are written step by step. There is a pre-reading material which is shared with the students.
Yes, it's a video in space, sir.
No video is visible. Facilitator. First, the facilitator demonstrates the skill
So the
on a
video is coming, sir.
followed by demonstration of the skill on this animal eye, which is mounted on the L-shaped glaucoma companion. Then this will be followed by repeated practice sessions by the mentee, which will be observed by the facilitator, and appropriate feedback is given. Thus, we have overcome the challenge of practicing this particular skill on the patient and ensuring patient safety. Now, what are the advantages we have attained? Repeated practice sessions under observance of the facilitator. There is attainment of competence with feedback and upgradation of skill acquisition. At the same time, of utmost importance, we have attained patient safety. The attachment is of low cost and can be attached to numerous models of the slit lamp. Here we see the slit lamp and we see the L-shaped glaucoma companion. As we see, the glaucoma companion has two screws. The first screw allows the limb to be mounted on the slit lamp, and the second screw allows the two circular apertures, the fixation of the animal eye. Once mounted, this is how it appears, and it helps us overcome the practice session which the resident or the student would be doing on the patient by doing the applanation tonometry. Similarly, we have the gonioscopic mirrors, and here we see the gonioscopy being performed on the patient. Now, all this skill acquisition ultimately leads us to the competence in the clinical practice, which has been demonstrated by two cases here, where we see a healthy disc where the correct evaluation of the IOP is of paramount importance, giving us the diagnosis of ocular hypertension. And in the second case, we see where angle assessment is of paramount importance for plateau iris. Thank you very much. And we would like to acknowledge the central team of the GSI for GlacoNow 2019, Dr. Deven Sood sir, Dr. B.K. Nayak sir, Dr. Manaddeep Singh sir, and the local team for GlacoNow 2019, Dr. Madhu Bhadoria ma'am, Dr. Jyoti Bhatt, and I was there myself. And this particular L-shaped glaucoma companion was designed along with Madhu Enterprises, and it was carried out for this clinical skills lab of the GlacoNow 2019 held in Lucknow. Thank you very much.
Shweta, that was a very interesting presentation.
Thank you, sir.
And how have the trainees accepted this training module?
So they were very happy when we took the feedback. Everybody was quite comfortable because the main hitch during learning phase of this AT and gonioscopy is that they're scared about touching the cornea and they might land up injuring the cornea. So in this particular module, when the goat's eye is being used, they can do it and they could see clearly the Myers and the gonioscopy, the structures, where at least they get their hands on of the gonioscopy and the GATSR, and they were very happy with that.
Okay, I think that's a good a new development, and certainly it will help. Do you have any idea of the cost factor?
So right now we have not thought of just putting it in the market, but once we get the feedback from the seniors like you, definitely we'll just introduce it to the market, sir.
Best of luck.
Thank you so much, sir.
That's a great presentation, Dr. Shweta. Dr. M.S. Ravindra, sir, would you like to give your comments on this?
Yeah, it's an excellent concept. Training youngsters is very important.
Thank
We
you,
all
sir.
presumed that patients are guinea pigs and we practice on
Yes,
them.
sir.
And such gadgets will really help them.
Yes,
Did you
sir, that was the
consider
idea.
instead of a goat eye, sacrificing a goat and bringing the eye to the lab and contaminations, OPD and all that? Did you consider an artificial eye being
Yes, sir.
replaced?
Yes, sir. We did that. So we tried the plastic eye before introducing it for the GSI lab, sir. But the problem what we were facing with the plastic eye was that Myers we were not getting. It was getting smudged, the whole fluorescein dye. And neither were the angle structures were not to be visible in the gonioscopy, sir. So we just pardoned that plastic eye and we switched over to the goat's eye, sir.
Okay, I
Like we
think
do
you should
for the wet
continue
labs.
continue your efforts on the plastic side, especially now. The 3D printing is available and you can modulate the size, shape, color, whatever texture, everything can be printed out in the clinic itself. I think that's the way to go ahead.
Definitely. Thank you so much, sir. Definitely I'll do that.
Keep
Thank you, sir.
working on the ideas. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good idea.
Were there any specific difficulties did you face, ma'am, when you were doing this?
No, actually, when we were designing, the first thing is that we conceptualized and we just drew the diagram and everything was discussed with Madhu Enterprises. And then after that, we did lots of practice sessions that how comfortable the trainees are going to be with the 4-mirror or the 3-mirror. Can they directly use the 4-mirror? Because putting that visco gel and everything is quite cumbersome for the trainees. So they were comfortable with both ways, the 4 mirrors as well as 3 mirrors. And AT was like a hit in the lab.
That was great. Yes.
Thank you so much.
So let's move on now to our next speaker, Dr. Ryan Mohanta, sir. He would be speaking to us on force measuring, suture tying, penetrating keratoplasty forceps. Over to you, sir. Please share your screen.
Good morning, good afternoon, all of you. I'm especially thankful to ARC for giving me this opportunity. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
So, over the next few minutes, I'll be talking on a force measuring, suture tying, penetrating keratoplasty forceps, which I have developed. So we know that a minimum of 16 interrupted sutures are required in the case of optical penetrating keratoplasty, and the visual outcome depends on the resultant astigmatism. And the resultant astigmatism depends on the tension of the individual sutures. So what if we can measure the individual suture tensions? So if we can quantify the tensions of individual sutures, we will be able to achieve astigmatic neutrality. So a little bit of research, I found that when we hold the forceps in our hand, there are two forces acting on it. One is the force required to hold the forceps, and the other one is the force required to pull the suture and tie the knot. So a little bit of research, I found that this force sensing resistor, which is called FSR, which was put to use in this particular contraption, the FSR decreases its resistance. There is you can see a serration in the tip of the the device. The resistance of particular device decreases if force is applied on the sensing area. This is the sensing area. So it is a very quick rise time of 1 to 2 milliseconds. The harder the force applied, the lower is the resistance. So it is nothing but it's made of several thin flexible layers of carbon and conductive elements. So when the force is applied on these conductive silver elements, it presses against the carbon and the resistance decreases. So that's what. So if we press the resistor, the resistance decreases. So now you can see this is a 0.12 forceps in which the FSR was applied and it was connected to a multimeter. So this was the setup. So this is the whole setup, the multimeter in place and the forceps with the FSR in place. So whenever the sensor gets a push, the resistance changes. Aim is to tie the first knot and the second locking knot at the same level of resistance, meaning equal tension at all the sutures. So in cadaveric eye, discard cadaveric eye, we did trephination, and after trephination, we had put one of the sutures through it, and on the left hand side, you can see the multimeter. And as we pull the suture, the forceps it presses the sensor over there, and the resistance changes, and that is being recorded in the multimeter alongside. So here you can see there is a change in the multimeter readings continuously. So here again for the next suture, the needle is passed and here you can see the multimeter, the figures are continuously changing because I'm holding the forceps and it is continuously changing, and so we need to maintain a particular digital display on the multimeter so as to achieve the astigmatic neutrality. So that is the aim of this particular study. So the problem of this prototype device is it enables a digital display, that too in a multimeter. It is impossible to look at the display while tightening the suture. So if you can add an auditory input to this, the surgeon won't have to look at the display multiple times. So this is the future direction. It can be incorporated to a single board mother small computer. It's called Arduino Uno, and from which auditory inputs can be generated. A no sound state will be treated as the end point of tying the suture knot. So when the resistance reaches a particular point, there is no sound, and the surgeon knows that I am at the perfect tension level. So these are some of the application areas. It requires further refinement pending ethics committee approval. It can be used in the real time or a normal keratoplasty procedure. It has an immense teaching and training value for cornea residents. And in other areas in surgical field where suture tension is of utmost importance with respect to outcome. Thank you very much.
That was an excellent presentation, Dr. Mohanta sir. Yes, Dr. Ravi Kumar Reddy sir, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes.
So
Please give
excellent
your-
idea and new idea. I congratulate you.
Thank you, sir.
What about whether you are using one forceps or two? The multimeter in one is enough or both sides is necessary?
Yeah, because see, when we are pulling a particular suture, the forces must be equal in both. So
equivalent we cannot judge. We cannot judge the equivalence. It should be one forceps or in two forcepses that multimeter.
One forceps, sir. Because
Only one
force will be equal. When you are pulling a suture, the force will be equal in both, otherwise it will move in one direction. So since the force is equal in both, so one of the forceps needs an attachment.
So another thing is the display should carry to the microscope view.
Yeah, that's what, sir. So what I am thinking is an auditory input like the Phaco machine. So when I have occlusion, there is a tick tick sound.
Yeah.
So that sound vanishes. That means we are reaching that particular tension. So that's it in my next plan.
Otherwise, also you can transfer to the microscope, digital.
Yeah.
Microscopic view.
Yeah, but that is again a costly, more costly thing.
Right.
And the auditory input is, I think,
you are applying the suture on a living tissue, isn't it? You have to measure that tensile strength after 1 hour, after few hours, or the next day. Then only we can come to a conclusion.
Yes,
At the same time, in the cadaveric eye, also you can see how your astigmatism is with the equal forces.
Yes, sir.
Because it may be tight on that moment. It will change within few hours or the next day. That also you have to take into consideration.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
What was the ideal force that you found?
So right now I'm not measuring any force. It was just a digital display of the resistance on that particular resistor. So that's what.
So you could actually, segregate it as ideal and too tight and too loose, and then that could become a very good guideline for all the beginners.
Exactly. So the resistance, the value of the resistor is 1 mega ohm. So that reduces to 0 if it is pressed to the maximum. So 1 mega ohm comes down to 20,000 kilo ohms. You are sure that the tension is right, and maintain that 20,000 kilo ohms for all the sutures.
All this, that is the most important thing. So I think that would really give, reduce the amount of astigmatism and all that in these patients.
Good idea.
Great presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Ayan, may I ask a question to you if the time
Yes,
permits?
sir. Yes, sir.
It's a small question.
Yes, sir.
I mean, there are so many factors which decide ultimately the astigmatism produced in that meridian by tightening the suture.
Yes,
You're looking at only one aspect of how hard you are pressing the suture between, like how hard you're pressing it like that.
Exactly, sir.
So more important is probably how much you pull it, how much you pull the two ends, and does your machine calibrate or calculate how much of pull you are exerting? By taking the
sir.
suture away?
It gives us a summation of two forces. The one holding the forceps and the one the pulling force.
Which is more important, sir? Which is more important? Like
Pulling is
ultimately,
more
when you
important.
get the SIA.
Holding should be as minimum as possible, and the pulling suture, while pulling the suture, that force is the main deciding factor.
Correct. Sure. So I think you need to focus on the pulling, how much it pulls, rather than how the
Yes,
holding it. Holding it, if you hold it too strong, you'll only break the suture.
Yeah, exactly, sir.
Fine. Thank you. Good
Thank you,
thoughts.
sir. Thank
Very
you.
good thoughts.
Thank you.
So may I call in the next speaker, Dr. Parthasarathi Roy. Are you ready, sir? Is he here?
Yeah, he was in the panelist. I just saw a couple of minutes ago. Can you see the raise hand option? Dr. Parthasarathi has raised hand. Dr. Parthasarathi, can you hear me?
Then is Dr. Santosh Agarwal ready?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, yes,
ma'am.
yes.
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 Shall I share
Can you share your first presentation? That's on an innovative way to deal with intumescent cataracts, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you for the
Dr.
opportunity.
Santosh, he is an excellent surgeon from Maharashtra and eager to hear you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your kind
Share your
words.
screen.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity. Now I will share my screen. Yeah, he has not switched off the screen. He's, I think.
1 second. I request my team. Can you please make Dr. Santosh Agarwal a co-host so that he can share the screen? Mr. Moderator.
To share now.
Yeah, give it a try, sir.
I'm trying repeatedly.
Okay, till then you just have a discussion. I'll come back in 1 minute.
Yes.
Okay, fine. So, Dr. Santosh Agarwal, you were to give a presentation on dealing with intumescent cataracts. So,
Yes,
before we can actually start sharing your presentation, what do you think is the most important challenge in intumescent cataracts?
In intumescent cataract, as you all know, that the capsulorhexis is the difficult part. Shall I share now? So,
Yes.
capsulorhexis is the difficult part because their intracapsular pressure is very high in intumescent cataract. And during CCC, you can get Argentinian flag sign, as we all have experienced that. So to avoid that and to decompress the capsular bag, I have come out with a very innovative idea. So I will share that idea with you in my presentation.
Yes.
I think I can
Yes.
share this.
Dr. Parthasarathy, can you please keep
So
this
this
mute?
is an intumescent.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes.
Yes,
Now
can
I
you
can
please
share.
mute? You can
I
share
was
after
worried. Okay.
Dr. Agarwal. Yes.
Yeah. Is it okay now?
Yes, we can see your video.
Yes. Now this is the intumescent cataract. Now through the main incision, I have poured the visco inside, and now these are the side ports I am taking. So what is the problem? Why it is stuck? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Now side ports have been made, and through one side port, I have aspirated the cortex after piercing the capsule. Very small capsulorhexis I have made, and simultaneously I have poured the visco inside the antechamber so that there will not be any shallow antechamber and you will not get any escape of the CCC. Now I aspirated the cortex from the mid periphery so that during CCC or when I will enlarge the CCC, it will not escape. So I aspirated the cortex from the mid periphery with the help of irrigation and aspiration. Now with the Vanna scissor, I have cut one edge, and now I enlarge the CCC to the desired side. Now the phaco is, as usual, is a most of the time it is a hard cataract, as you already many of you have experienced this, and sometimes it is fragile also. But in old age, most of the time it is a hard cataract. So it is stuck, getting stuck. Yes. The phaco is as usual, so nothing new in this. Only the hard cataract you have to take care of. And I have used my disposable chopper, that is the 26 or 24 gauge needle, bent needle. I have modified it to the chopper, and through that automated visco delivery was attempted. Now this is the another case. This is with SICS. I tried. Now these are the two side ports. Again, through one end, I pierced the needle, bent needle, and I aspirated the cortex initially, and then I performed small CCC, and then afterwards, the aspiration of the cortex from the mid periphery with the help of IA, irrigation aspiration handpieces. After followed by enlargement of the CCC, after putting the visco inside the antechamber, the chamber is made deep, the capsule is flattened, and now the capsulorhexis. So there will not be any escape of the CCC or Argentinian flag sign. I am performing this for last 2 years, and I didn't find any escape of my CCC, and I was very comfortable while doing the phaco in this intumescent cataract. In the COVID time, we have got so many cases of hypermature and intumescent cataracts, and this technique was very useful, rewarding, and I will recommend to all surgeons that this is very innovative. The main important point is while taking out the cortex, you have to pour the visco from other side. That is a very important step that I want to convey, so that your antechamber will not become shallow at any point of time. Thank you very much for your patient listening.
That was a nice presentation, Dr. Santosh. Dr. Krishna Prasad, sir, you're here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your comments, please.
Yeah, Dr. Santosh, congratulations on a very good video compilation. Can you now simplify? I mean, you actually told about your innovation. Now, can you probably point out to the exact, what is your point of innovation? What exactly is that small difference that you did, what you did differently, which is going to make all the difference?
Yeah, one thing is that I have made first small CCC and later on I enlarge it. That is one point. Second thing, you are not making it, small CCC is not made under visco, but it is pierced by the needle. So that is very tiny opening, and I aspirated. It is attached to the aspiration port, aspiration tubing, so that you are aspirating the cortex from the center. That is main important point. And at the same time you are delivering the visco from other end, so that your AC will not become shallow. So there is very unlikely chances of escape of CCC at any point given time. That is very important. Pouring the visco simultaneously and aspirating the cortex from the center.
Like a visco pump, you are continuously, it's a bimanual procedure where you pump the visco and
I have my automated technique. I am going to present that in another session. Automated technique. Also, you can ask your colleague, assistant to inject the visco from other end. You can hold the.
So you mean you don't have to use any premium viscoelastics like, Helon 5 or Viscoat? That is what you actually mean to say? In this
I didn't find any because I am simultaneously pouring the visco from other side, so there is no need of any high molecular weight viscose or cohesive viscose. But if you are not using that type of, then you have to use it. If you are not doing simultaneous injection, then you have to use it.
But still, there is a small risk of whenever you are doing a small rhexis. It is not about small or big. The risk of peripheral straight air does exist even in smaller rhexis, right?
No. Before that, I am piercing the bent needle, 24 or 26 gauge needle, through the center of the capsule and aspirating simultaneously, aspirating the cortex from the center first, so that your chances of escape is very unlikely.
Dr. Santosh, there is one thing. In intumescent cataract, it is the first incision which is the most critical. Yes. So later on, once you start making the CCC, it is a different issue, but it is the absolute first time you prick the anterior capsule is the most critical.
Yeah,
at that point of time, if the anterior capsule is totally flattened and taut, maybe that is the most critical point.
For making it flat, as much possible, we are injecting the visco. Then the bent needle is attached to the aspiration port.
Right, I agree.
You are aspirating while going inside the capsular bag. You are piercing the capsular bag. At the same time, you are aspirating while going through that capsular opening.
Dr. Santosh, can I have a question?
Yes, sir.
There is the difference, because just as Anga mentioned, that once you prick, and the first prick can lead to the urgent and flex sign.
But for that, at the same time,
this can be converted into a small with a good viscoelastic and a spiral capsulorhexis. So that will be quite safe. And by injecting manually with the both hands, there are always chances of pressure mismatch. You might aspirate more, and because the visco is slightly viscous, it will not come with the same pressure as you are aspirating. So always there is a chance of pressure mismatch, and it can lead to the. However, you might be experienced and not doing all this, and the coordination with when you are operating with the both eye probably is not so good as compared to when you have high density viscoelastic inside the chamber.
That will be better, but this is one idea.
Great concept, actually. Great concept.
So you don't have to use any high molecular weight, or sometimes it can come out. High molecular visco is easily they come out through the incision. So it is better to inject, and you become safe and comfortable also.
Gentle reminder, doctor, the time is up.
Yes, yes. Let's move on. Great concept, Dr. Santosh.
Also in this, a small amount of luck is also required with your technique, but anyway.
And you have compared with anti-chamber maintainer?
Anti-chamber maintainer, yeah, I compared, sir. Yeah, I compared.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Mismatch will be more.
Mr. Prasad.
Mismatch will be over. Pressure mismatch will be more.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Santosh. We'll be going ahead with Dr. Parthasarathy first for his talk, and then we'll come back to you for your second talk. Is it okay?
Yes, ma'am. No problem.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Dr. Parthasarathy, are you ready? Can you please share your screen?
How to share, ma'am?
Dr. Parthasarathy, at the center, do you see there is a green icon, share screen at the bottom?
No, मेरा तो Q&A, chat, this type of screen is coming.
That is your chat screen.
Where to go?
On the main screen where all videos are visible, all tiles are visible at the bottom. Do you see the green icon? Share screen?
No.
He's seeing question and answer and chat. It's next to chat.
Yes.
It is
It's a green icon.
green icon, yeah, but in my above in the top left.
I think you'll have to put on the video. Without video, it doesn't work.
Have you already opened your presentation, sir?
नहीं अभी तो presentation open नहीं किया. Open करेंगे. Open
So,
करो.
Sanjay, can you help him, or can you play it from your side?
He has to send me that then. Let me check. Dr. Partha, let me know at the bottom. What do you
Yes,
see?
can you please coordinate with him?
Bottom I am seeing whether lower hand is chat and Q&A, and on the left of it is mute.
No, go
And
to the
right
of chat. Right of chat.
Right of chat, hand raising or hand lowering.
There is no green icon of share screen with an arrow.
Okay, wait. I got it, Dr. Anga. I got it.
His video
I got
is
it.
off.
I guess he is in panelist and he's watching that window. Let me take. He's in the attendee right now. Let me take him into
Okay.
panelist. I got it.
In the meantime, then can I go ahead with the next presentation?
Please go ahead.
Yes. Dr. Parthasarathy, we'll just wait for a few minutes.
Panelist.
Dr. Partha, in next.
Join as panelist.
Yes. Please click that message. Join as panelist.
Oh, acha.
And now you can see the green screen. Dr. Anga, please go ahead.
Okay. Is he ready now?
Let me check.
Move ahead with Dr. Santosh's talk and then come back to him. Is it okay?
Sure.
Dr. Santosh, are you here?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. We'll come back. We are back to you now for your next talk. You will be speaking on innovative, simple, and novel AC paracentesis device for safe intravitreal injections.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Thank you once again, ma'am.
Yes, my pleasure.
So this is also an innovative method for safe intravitreal injection. It is a simple device.
Chairman, co-chairman, convener, and my dear friends. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I am going to present my innovative technique of pre-injection paracentesis for safe intravitreal injection. In this, the sterile earbud is mounted on 26 gauge or 30 gauge disposable needle to obstruct the inner hole of the needle partially. This device is pierced into the anterior chamber till the end of the bevel is just inside the anterior chamber. Care is taken not to touch or damage any intraocular structure like iris, pupil or lens. That means part of the bevel is inside AC and other part is in corneal stroma. Now the site of intravitreal injection is marked and the intravitreal injection is given slowly and cautiously. Throughout the procedure, fixation forceps is applied to avoid inadvertent movement of eye and eventually damaging the intraocular structures. The aim is to maintain intraocular pressure across the procedure and thereafter. It is observed that during and after intravitreal injection of drug, there was no subconjunctival bleb, vitreous incarceration in the needle tract, and also increase in IOP leading to compromised optic disc. With the new simple inexpensive device, all these complications are obviated. While you inject the drug inside eye through intravitreal injection, the same amount of aqueous is egressed slowly in a guarded fashion. IOP is well maintained and vitreous incarceration in the needle tract would not happen, and chances of further complications are precluded. Also, optic disc perfusion is well maintained and there is hardly any need of post-injection fundus examination. I have been using this technique for last 3 years and I find it very useful. Moreover, the bleed is dramatically reduced. And the intravitreal injection of any drug, particularly triamcinolone or 2 or 3 antibiotics in case of endophthalmitis, become absolutely safe. For last 3 years, I have been using this technique and I am very satisfied with this technique and I didn't find any complication whatsoever, including infection. Thank you very much for your patient hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Santosh. That was an excellent
Patient
presentation.
feedback, ma'am, 1 minute.
अच्छा, बहुत बढ़िया। मैं डॉक्टर साहब से पूछा कि आप इंजेक्शन दे दिया तो जरा हो गया। हाँ। चलो ओके, तो अभी आपको ठीक लग रहा है, कोई तकलीफ नहीं है, कुछ भी चलेगा। ओके, थैंक।
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Nice presentation, Dr. Santosh.
Thank you,
Dr.
ma'am.
Anand, sir, your comments.
Yeah. First of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Santosh for putting this up, and more than that, congratulate him on putting up so many, innovations. It's nice to see you doing all that. I just like to say that, first of all, routine intravitreal injections, we are just injecting 0.05 ml. So the concern of raise of IOP, efflux is very minimal. This is something which we're doing globally. Second concern is that, you're holding or stabilizing the globe with the left hand, you're injecting the injection with the right hand, and you have this device, your paracentesis needle with the earbud suspended over the brow of the patient, and the eye is moving. Maybe you're stabilizing it. So there is a little bit of a error of chance of that device injuring in somebody else's hands, not yours, in somebody else's hands of. This device is kind of hanging free floating over the eyeball when you're doing all this. So it looks like a little overkill for some AC paracentesis, which is really not required for a 0.05 ml injection. Yes, where this perhaps has a role maybe is, as you pointed out, when you're putting in a large amount of, for example, antibiotics, 0.3 ml, or if you're doing a gas plus injection in those situations. But the issue is you're making a procedure which is fairly invasive, a little more invasive by adding this particular step. That's my only concern, and those are the issues that I'd like to highlight.
Sir, thank you for your questions. Actually, you already said that is a 0.05 ml, but most of the time the bleb is formed in spite of that. So that means your vitreous pressure is increased, and that will come in the needle tract. Many times you may not be knowing, or the incidence is very less, but the chances of vitreoretinal traction would be there. Second thing, if you inject triamcinolone, it is a 0.1 cc. So you have to do paracentesis in such situations. Third thing is I have not seen any complication like infection so far. Fourth thing is you are holding the eyeball, you are stabilizing with the fixation forceps. One. Second thing, I am not piercing the paracentesis needle inside. Only that bevel is just inside the antechamber, not going one or more, 2 millimeter at the most. So it is stabilized by your stroma, corneal stroma. I didn't see any inadvertent any injury in the antechamber. I have not seen any case. And it is very comfortable. Patient says that, have you given injection? Because dramatically the pain is reduced because there is no rise in IOP. No IOP rise, no optic disc perfusion problem, and the needle track is very safe. No vitreous incarceration, no bleb formation. So very simple device. Little bit learning curve is there, that I admit, but I am very comfortable with this technique. Some company can come out with a small thing and the innovative or some modified technique, modified device, but this is a crude method. In our OT, we can perform it in our routine practice.
I understand. The only counterpoint that I would have to offer to this issue of efflux, which I think is a little overstated, but I'd say that you can easily do a pre-procedure paracentesis, which will obviate the need for so many things going on simultaneously, so much of ambidextrosity. You seem to be a very ambidextrous person. You're doing a lot of bimanual stuff, but I'm just saying you can make a procedure a little more simpler and negate that issue of efflux, if at all you find that much of an issue, by just doing a paracentesis before you do the procedure.
If you do paracentesis before your injection, what will happen? The hypotony will be there, and that will not help you in injecting your main intravitreal injection. Many times this happens. That's why earbud is pierced in the needle track. That will reduce the egress of the aqueous, and hypotony will not be there.
So that's what I said. This has value when you're doing 0.3 ml, 0.2 ml, 0.4 ml.
Yes,
that kind of
injection.
Maybe when 0.05 ml, I think it's a little. But anyway, it's very interesting to see this and encouraging to note your results.
With due respect, doctors, we have to move ahead. Thank you so much.
Points of discussion. Yes, we'll move on. Thank you, Dr. Santosh. Both the presentations were excellent. Thank you, Dr. Anand.
Thank
you, Dr. Parthasarathy, are you ready now?
And a computer rather.
Hello, Dr. Parthasarathy, are you ready? Okay.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, Dr.
I am ready.
Yes,
I am ready. Can I share screen?
Please share your screen, sir. Yes. Welcome, Dr. Parthasarathy. You would be speaking to us on a squinted person has a stable personality. Yes, please share your screen.
Yes, so we can see your screen.
Just check. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I will present my invention. A squinted person has a stable personality. It is not going down.
Doctor, you need to make it full screen.
Okay.
Yes, it's okay now. Please go ahead.
Now, this was published in Panacea Journal of Medical Science in 2017. Von Nuden, sir, can you just? I cannot see the screen, sir. Just sir, the right side is obstructing, sir.
So please shift your view. Screen view, can you please shift the bar of the screen?
It is obstructing, ma'am.
Doctor, you're saying your video is obstructing, right?
My video is obstructed by the screen.
Yes.
Your screen.
So do one thing.
Madam is seeing on my madam and other three. Yeah.
Do one thing, doctor. Do you see there's a minus icon, small icon on your video left top, which is saying hide thumbnail video? Click on that.
Hold on, pardon.
On top of your video, left, extreme left, there is a minus icon, small minus icon. Click on that.
Top of my video.
Yeah.
It's not moving. No? Which one? Oh, acha, this video, your
Yes.
video. Oh, acha.
Our video.
Yes. Now it's okay.
Cool. Thank you, sir. Please go ahead.
Let me start from beginning. Von Nuden exemplified. Can you, sir, hear me? Hello?
Yes, sir. We can hear you, sir. Please go ahead.
Von Nuden exemplified how two siblings, a 8-year-old girl and her 6-year-old brother, both having same magnitude of hypermetropia, reacted differently when confronted with excessive accommodative effort to see clear. Due to difference in their personality trait, the girl exerted excessive accommodation and saw clear but squinted, and boy instinctively relaxed accommodation to remain orthopodic but saw blurred. Von Nuden further stressed importance of personality by commenting whether the visual system reacts with esotropia and clear vision versus orthopodia and blurred vision depends less on the degree of hypermetropia than on a child's personality. He also noted mutually opposite personality traits between these two groups of children as represented by the girl, fastidious and exacting nature, and the boy, easygoing and relaxed nature. However, he felt that their observational impression needs to be substantiated by an appropriate study. But Dr. Nuden's contention remained unanswered for more than 3 decades until a study on this subject for the first time in the world was taken up by the present presenter, who published an article in this regard. Jones defined neuroticism as vulnerable to neurosis, which implies low tolerance for stress, whether it be physical or in painful situation, or psychological in conflict or frustration situation. Therefore, as per Jones' definition, the boy and the girl in Von Nuden's example had a painful and frustration situation of asthenosopia and diplopia, and confronted a psychological conflict situation where whether to relax accommodation and see blood or exert accommodation and see clear, according to their personality trait in neuroticism stable dimension of personality. Hence, according to my hypothesis, the boy in the example had low tolerance for stress and thus had neurotic type of personality and should have high square and neuroticism stable scale. On the otherwise, the girl has a stable type of personality because he confronted the stage, confronted the stress. Therefore, the bottom line of development of concomitant squid is to choose between orthophoria and tropia and clear vision versus orthoporia and blurred vision. Hence, it is evident that the development of squint is a function of child's personality trait. There are ample evidence also that a child's personality trait is carried forward to his adult life personality. Therefore, the absence of phoria, latent or manifest squint in adult may be indicative of his personality pattern. So yeah, we took 58 college students, and it can be safely presumed that these students who have myopia in their childhood faced the psychological conflict situation as described above and ended up with either exophoria or nophoria according to their personality trait. Therefore, we would find out how exophoria and nophoria would be correlated with neuroticism stable and extrovert introvert dimensions of their personality. In this study, personality was considered as a cause of phoria and not an effect of it. Hence, this study of correlating phoria and personality is unique and pioneering, as based upon knowledge, no study on this correlation was undertaken before. 58 myopic student, -2 diopter spherical equivalent refractive area or more was included in the study. All students know English as they had to appear in university examination in English. The personality is determined in neuroticism extraversion scale by Morse personality in inventory 48 questionnaire. At the end of the answering questionnaire, their phoria status was measured by PBCT test. The highest and lowest possible score in personality inventory test is 48 and 0. At the middle point of 24. Out of total 58, 32 students were male and 26 were female. The age range of all is 18 to 30 years, students were found to have spherical equivalent myopia from -2 to 12 diopter. Out of total 58 students, 37 had exophoria and rest 21 had orthoporia. Now here the phoria and no phoria is plotted against n score less than or equal to 24 and n score more than 24. Here we see the two-tailed p value equals to 0.0005, which is statistically significant. It is highly statistically significant. And here we plotted phoria and no phoria with extroversion introversion scale of -24 and more than 24. Here the relation is not statistically significant. So from the obtained of the study, it is seen that 81.08% of those with phoria, exophoria, will have a chance of having stable personality pattern compared to 33.33% of orthophoric having such chance. This difference is highly statistically significant, whereas only 18.91% of those with phoria will have chance to have neurotic personality pattern compared to 66.66 of orthophoric in this myopic study sample having such chance. Therefore, phorics will have a high tendency to have a stable personality and low tendency for neurotic personality. This was evolved by the study. However,
Dr. Partha, this is just to update, the time is up. You can wind up in next 30 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I have concluded.
Thank you,
Dr. Partha Sathi.
Yes, Dr. Rajiv Chaudhary, sir. Yes, please.
So in summary, you mean to say that if you have the phoria, your chances of having a normal stable personality is much more as compared to normal person?
Yes, that's it, sir. That's it. You got it.
So what is the basic reason? Means a normal person having a chance of more developing any psychological problem as compared to phoria. So what was the reason you think that?
The reason, sir, I have already explained. It is determined at the childhood. When there is any form of refractive error, there is a conflict between, say, in esotropia. The von Nuden has exemplified that a boy of 8 years and her brother of 6 years of age both have same magnitude of hypermetropia, +5 diopter of hypermetropia, but the girl had esotropia, but the boy didn't have the esotropia. He concluded.
My question is what you think that what will be the reason for having a
that difference in their personality on that time when they confronted whether to exert the accommodation to see clear or to relax the accommodation to see blur, but remain orthophoric.
But you said that if they have exophoria or any phoria, the chances of their having a stability personality is much more as compared to euphoric.
Yes.
So it means that if you have any phoria, the chances of you are having a normal personality is much more. So there must be some, your study must be reason.
That is the reason, sir. It is determined at the time of when because of the refractive error, they are facing a dilemma whether they have to exert the accommodation and see clear, but by exerting excessive accommodation, they become squinted. But another group of person like the boy, he doesn't want to be so perfect in seeing. He want to get rid of the asthenopia and the diplopia that occurs due to the squinting. So he prefers that he sees blur but remain orthophoric.
Thank you so much, doctor. We need to proceed ahead.
Thank you so much, Dr. Partha Sathi. Thank you so much, Dr. Rajiv Chaudhary, sir. Can we move on now? Our next speaker is Dr. Pavan Kumar. He would be speaking to us on giving life to surgical training through GoPro Live. Please share
Thank you,
your
madam. Thank you, madam. Can you hear me clearly, madam?
Yes, yes.
Yes, Dr.
Just
Pawan, we
sharing
can
this.
hear you.
Please share your
I'm
screen.
just screen the screen, yes. Is my presentation visible?
Yes, it's visible.
I thank the organizers of the AOC ARC committee for providing this great opportunity in presenting my innovation in this forum. My innovation is giving life to surgical training through GoPro Live. This is a GoPro camera-based surgical video recording system. As all of us know, the surgical training where the ophthalmology is a combination of both medical and surgical field, and to excel, we need to have a good exposure in both surgical and medical field. Surgical training for residents and fellows is inadequate in some places, and it is further complicated in this COVID times because of the decreased patient flow and reduced community outreach activities. Role of surgical videos in training, we can use these surgical videos as a basis for video coaching. It can also be used as a self-assessment and evaluation. Video-based assessment can be done of the residents and fellows. It can be used to document, audit, and quality improvement, and significantly to improve surgeon performance. The traditional video recording devices available, the problem is they're fixed and they're not able to shift in all the other theaters, and we cannot give a live voiceover when the surgery is happening. Sometimes there's a difficulty in recording and accessibility of this video, and usually proves to be costlier. So we introduced this a modified GoPro camera-based surgical video recording system.
GoPro is a compact action camera mainly used.
Is the audio heard, sir?
Yes, yes, yes.
By sportsmen and people involved in extreme action. With a dedicated app for both Android and iPhone, the GoPro camera can pair perfectly with any mobile device to access a variety of features. With inbuilt Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, the users can go live. GoPro has inbuilt speaker through which the user can give voiceover to what is getting captured in the camera. We have mounted GoPro camera to the side scope of the surgical microscope, which is paired with a tablet through the GoPro app. This video recording system has turned out to be extremely useful during the COVID times. Learning from the experts. When an expert surgeon is operating, the surgery can be live streamed as in Facebook or YouTube, which can be watched by the junior surgeons through their smartphone or laptop easily at their own place. Since GoPro comes with an inbuilt microphone, the operating surgeon can give live commentary of the steps being performed.
The rexes should be performed under high molecular weight visco.
This will greatly benefit a larger group of students. Guidance from the seniors. When a junior surgeon is operating, the live video streaming can be used to get guidance from the trainer or any senior surgeon. Junior surgeon can present their problems through the GoPro microphone, and the trainer can keep adding comments in the comment box, which can be conveyed to the operating surgeon by the assistant. Even though a telephonic conversation can also be used to get guidance from the trainer, the discussion can negatively disturb the patient who is getting operated. Telementoring. Once the initial training is complete and the trainee has started performing surgical technique independently, monitoring of the surgery by the mentor stops at that stage. Mentor reviewing the trainee's surgical performance after a certain number of independent cases can greatly increase the trainee's efficiency. Many a times the mentor may be staying far from the trainee's place and frequent travel to guide may not be practical. GoPro recording system can help in telementoring either during live streaming or reviewing the surgical videos at a later time.
So this is one of the
GoPro is a
This is one of the video recording which we did with the GoPro, where you can see that surgeon is giving voiceover while operating.
In young patients, mature cataract, the nucleus is very brittle. No? It is like a cookie almost. So here you don't have to try to chop. These are good cases to practice.
And these videos we can stream it through a closed Facebook group where only few people of the members in the Facebook can watch the video live. And this will be stored for future viewing also. So this will be there in the Facebook, and whenever the resident or a fellow becomes free, they can go back and see this video which is there on the Facebook. And also the evaluator or the trainer can also see it whenever the opportunity is available. And we carried out to the next level where every evening we discuss with all the junior surgeons through this Facebook Live recorded videos. So when we evaluated, it found that most of them like this system. They almost gave 22 scores out of 25. And finally, it is simple and easy to use, a cheaper alternative for a high quality surgical video recording system, which can also be used for live streaming. Thank you.
That was an excellent presentation, Dr. Pavan Kumar.
Thank you.
Dr. Prashant, are you here? Dr. Prashant Bavankule? Dr. Ravindra sir, would you like to comment on his innovation? Dr. Prashant is here? Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Anaga. Pavan, this was a nice innovation and a cheap alternative to what we can do thing, as well as the fantastic use of telemedicine in this COVID times. But would it be a replacement to the existing pattern of teaching, like video-based, which is available now on online everywhere? Does it give the feel of a live session?
Yes, sir. Two things I want to tell. So one is, as senior surgeon is operating.
Can't hear you.
Junior surgeon. Yes, sir. Can you hear me now, sir?
Yeah, loudly. Yeah.
Yes, sir. There are two things which I want to highlight here, sir. The first thing is, when the senior surgeon is operating, we don't have all the residents to be there in the operation theater to observe and learn from the senior surgeon. They can be at any of the choosable place and they can watch it, and the surgeon can give a live voiceover. Second thing is, if the junior surgeon is operating, once his training is finished, he's operating independently, the evaluator or the trainer can sit in his OPD and can see the video, and he can always give a comment, so that he doesn't have to be there with the trainer at the training at the point of time. Okay. He can be in the same place or he can be different place.
Nice.
This can be used even post-COVID time also, sir. And the overall cost, along with the C-mount, along with the cable, everything comes somewhere between 2 to 2.5 lakhs, which is way more cheaper than the traditional video recording system, which costs around 10 to 12 lakhs. And the quality of video we get is around, we can even record into 4K, 1080p easily, sir. We can just change it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Where is it available?
Madam, now initially we use it, we were doing it in experiment by buying a GoPro camera and then doing all the adjustments. Now it is sold through ROLab and it is commercially available.
Thank you. Dr. Ravindra sir, your comments, please.
Yeah, I think GoPro is a well-known camera system used by professionals. They use a lot, especially in sports and such activities. What will be the difference, like when you present one video on GoPro and the other one on regular, 4K or high resolution, HD video? Can you make out which is which? Is there a resolution difference? Is there a brightness? Or all those? Does it give the
resolution
same kind of?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It gives almost the same resolution. Very difficult to make out which is what. It's as good as our Sony live recording system. One more advantage is the video what we get output is of a lesser memory size when you compare to the traditional one, where we get 4 GB, 8 GB, 12 GB. But this is not like that. We get it somewhere around 800 MB, 1 GB. So that it's very easy to upload in Facebook also, so that they can see a live streaming. And we can easily store it, record it, and we can transfer it very easily. So when you compare to the traditional system.
Editing is possible on the conventional video editors?
On the GoPro, it is not possible, sir. We can just transfer to any of the software. It's available in both MP4, MOV format, and we can easily edit it, sir.
Fine. When the voice was coming, I think there was a lot of disturbance from the surgeon, from the operation theater.
Yes, sir.
Is it possible to attach a microphone to the camera and reduce the noise?
Yes, sir. There is a facility available, but the problem is to have a wired. It contains that 3.2 the plug which comes. So it's very difficult to attach a earphone and then attach it to the surgeon, because the camera is attached to the microscope. It's very difficult to move around the microscope. And the only thing is, you can just switch off the fan if it is available, which is working. You can just talk the surgeon a little louder.
Okay, good.
Disturbance is an issue. I totally agree with this.
Great. Lovely presentation. Dr. Sushmita Kaushik ma'am, any comments at the end of our session? Is she here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
enjoyed the whole session actually, and I had almost the same question that when you're transmitting this, have you, as we all asked for all the others, have you validated this to the usual camera with the thing? I understand the idea is that you can transmit it live, but with the many institutions now have facilities to transmit live even if you're not in the OR. So have you compared that to any of the existing video transmissions that we have?
Thank you so much for asking this question, madam. I wanted to highlight one thing, madam. Here, the system consists of two things. One is the camera and there's an iPad. There are no other cables attached. So it is very easy to connect. One. Second thing is, when we are in our own hospital, we recorded both the GoPro videos and the traditional videos, and we presented to the same operating surgeon and the evaluator randomly. And we asked which one is better. All of them scored GoPro video as a quality wise compared to scored better compared to the traditional video recording system, and we did evaluation also, and we are writing a paper on this also. I mean, few more months maybe we'll get it out for publication also.
Yeah, and in one limitation, I think you should add, you must have high-speed video Wi-Fi, which is going to be another problem with
maybe
transmitting
in this
high-quality
Zamana,
videos across.
I agree.
That's something that you need to keep in mind. And another
in this
suggestion:
Zamana FiberNet.
Have this on the
in
slit lamp as well. I said have this on the
yes,
slit lamp
madam.
so we can do gonioscopy.
Yes,
and
madam. We are trying that
evaluation
attachment
as
also.
well.
Yes, madam. We can do that also. That needs other adapter for set lamp. We are working on it, madam. But I'm not able to exactly tell you the output now. But we are working on it. Thank you.
Dr. Anaga, we have 30 seconds to wind up.
Yes, yes. So this is a great teaching modality. Thank you so much, Dr. Pavan Kumar, and thank you so much to our chairman, Dr. Ravindra sir, Dr. Sushmita ma'am, our convener, Dr. Chitra ma'am, to all our judges. Thank you so much. It was an amazing session and we saw lovely videos and presentations, and it's so heartening to see that all of us not only are involved in our practice, but also are going ahead and bringing out newer innovations, which is going to help all of us in the future. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day ahead.
My attendance also.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Bye. Bye, Anga. Bye.
Bye.
Dr.
Thank you
Ramesh.
so much.
Bye.
Thank